Okay, today is April the 7th, 2022. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University. And with me is Dr. Chris Davis, a member of the science faculty at Northern Oklahoma College and an expert on Oklahoma mosses. So thank you for coming today. This interview is being recorded via Zencastr, and we'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 in Oklahoma and on Chris's life in particular. And before we talk about COVID, let's learn a little bit about you. Start wherever you like.
First, I'm not quite doctor yet.
Okay.
Working on finishing a PhD.
Okay.
So not quite yet. Have a master's, but I am a member of the science faculty at NOC. I am also involved in disaster response with the American Red Cross, and I'm fortunate to be able to do both of those things remotely since the pandemic started.
And where did you go to high school?
Bartlesville.
Bartlesville. Graduated in what year?
Oh gosh, 99.
99. And then what were your plans at that point?
My plans after high school?
Yeah.
Gosh.
What were you thinking at that point you wanted to do?
I planned to teach and planned to major in English and psychology. I wound up finishing the English degree. My PhD will be in educational psychology, so I just kind of took the long way there with the specialty in research, evaluation, measurement, and statistics. And wound up teaching high school for a number of years before moving to a college setting. I worked as a tech writer for a number of years, and at that point kind of made the shift from English into hard sciences. So went back to school, took some additional coursework, and kind of made that shift. So.
Okay. And you do you have a family?
Yes, husband and 2 kids.
And 2 kids. And pets. I know you have Ike.
Yes, I have a service dog named Ike. We also have Ike is a Great Dane. We have a pack of 6 other Great Danes and Great Dane mixes who are rescues, all of them, and they're kind of a motley crew.
I had to Google a little bit. I didn't realize, I knew we have service dogs on campus, but I understand yours is trained for your breathing. If your breathing gets out of rhythm.
It's if my oxygen level. Ike helps with some mobility things. I do have some mobility issues due to some collagen abnormalities. My joints have a tendency to dislocate. That's not super compatible with walking. And so Ike helps me with balance, and when I use a wheelchair, he helps me get around because long-distance wheelchair stuff tends to result in shoulder dislocations and things like that. And he helps take some of the load off of my upper body in that case. And then if my oxygen level drops due to mast cell activation syndrome, he is able to alert me to that, because if that happens, carbon dioxide level goes up, my breath starts smelling more acidic. I'm able to do something about that, because if I've gotten hypoxic, I'm not necessarily as sharp mentally as what would be ideal, so I may not be super aware of that having happened.
Okay. Was he trained here in Oklahoma?
I did his mobility training, and he kind of naturally alerted on when I was in distress, and we worked with a trainer here in Stillwater, actually, to kind of take that natural alerting tendency to then take that and then sort of accentuate what he was already doing. So whenever I would have a mast cell reaction, we would take samples of my saliva and sweat, which is kind of a weird thing to do, and stick them in the freezer, and then let him smell those samples, and then give him lots of treats over and over and over again. So he associates that with if he does the thing, if he like pushes me with his nose, or pushes somebody else with his nose, if I don't react, then he's going to get treats, and he likes cookies. So,
Yeah. Well, I guess who doesn't, right?
right.
So before pre-COVID, describe a typical work week for you
Oh gosh.
before pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, I worked full-time for NOC and was near full-time for the Red Cross, and would do Red Cross things when I was not on NOC hours. And so I would get up, drive to campus, teach classes in class, do office hours there. At the time, I've been in grad school for quite a while and would be, in classes doing coursework and things like that, sort of in between times. And worked Red Cross work, predominantly at that point as a volunteer, sort of in the evenings, on weekends, early mornings, stuff like that. And I'm trained in various martial arts and would also go to the gym, 4 to 5 times a week, just to keep my muscles in shape. And that was my physical therapy, really. And which is actually something that has largely gone away since COVID has been a thing, because it's not safe.
Right. So do you remember what you might have been? Well, before I ask that, I'm curious. What's your PhD topic?
I always get looks when I tell people. I am studying the effects of cemetery destruction by flooding events on individual and community recovery from disaster.
Okay. Not like when a land is taken and they flood it to make a lake, but more
No,
for
no, more like,
disaster.
yeah, more like during flooding disasters, where graves are suddenly unearthed or damaged. And so in communities where people have lost everything already, and then have the added trauma of, not knowing where their loved ones' remains are. And so I'm studying how people form attachments to
Mhm.
places specific to cemeteries, and whether that attachment is different than the attachments they form to, like, courthouse squares or public parks or things like that, in hopes that that will help some emergency management planning and preparedness activities.
Well, cemeteries are something we visit quite a bit with our work. We go out to interview centennial farm owners. Before we leave, we've got to go to the cemetery, and so they're attached to it in that way too. So I understand where you're coming from. That's an interesting topic, I think. Okay, so do you remember where you were when we got the message to come down that we were to stay safe in our home and not go, lock down basically?
For me, it was a matter of kind of which message, because I kind of got it
Okay.
from everywhere. Um, because I got it, from NOC as a faculty member, and then because I'm a member of the staff at the NOC OSU Gateway, I got it from OSU in that regard as part of our partnership. And then because I'm affiliated with OSU Stillwater, I got it from there. And then because I'm also working on a second master's in public health, which affiliates me with the Center for Health Sciences in Tulsa, I got it
Mhm.
from there. And I have taken classes at OSU Tulsa, I got it from there. And so it was this just onslaught of messaging that was, essentially the same stuff. You know, NOC and OSU's messaging was a little different, but very closely aligned. It's just the message was the same, the words were slightly different. At the same time, sort of on the Red Cross side of the house, that was a different side of messaging. Um, and sort of all of that, I was sitting in my office at NOC, and sort of my email on my phone and texting and all of that, but sort of going off all at the same time. However, prior to that, one of the other volunteer activities that I do, I volunteer for Stillwater Emergency Management as a storm spotter, among other things. And we had a little bit more warning. And so kind of knew something was coming. And, not that, oh, hey, like, stuff is going to be shutting down. Today you're leaving for spring break and not coming back for 2 years, not like that, but knew that something was on the horizon. And, as a public health student, we'd been hearing about this virus that was emerging. So in some ways, I had probably been hearing about it for several weeks before we got, like, the message. It really, really didn't dramatically affect me until a week or so after that initial message, when my immunologist just said, you're not going back. So effectively what happened for me is that I left my office spring break of 2020, and I haven't been back.
Not at all?
Zero.
So you've had to switch to teaching online?
Yes. Teaching online from my home office, which is what you see here.
Yeah.
Had to create.
Had you done that prior to this?
I had done some online classes, but my primary teaching modality was in person. I had also had some hybrid classes, but not as many. So, but had done some. So it wasn't like a completely jarring shift. But it went from being on campus every day to not being on campus since March of 2020. Like I literally haven't been in my office since we left that day.
That's hard with your students too, not being able to see them face to face.
Yeah, it's been an experience. Like, it's something else.
How have you adapted your science courses since from home? I mean, it's kind of hard to do, I don't know, experiments or whatever from.
It is. Fortunately, our textbooks very early on really stepped up their virtual lab game.
Okay.
And so, very, very quickly, and they had been working on it, but very, very quickly they came out with some vastly improved virtual labs. And there are some other resources that I had already been using that let students kind of interact with the world around them a little bit more. My very early teaching jobs were in an alternative high school where we had little to no budget for labs. So I have quite a bit of experience for, if all you have is what's in your kitchen cabinets, okay, we can do science labs. Like, we'll make it work. And that was really helpful, because if that's all we had to work with, we could still do labs. And I teach general biology, so it's not like I had to walk students through culturing microbiology plates and aseptic techniques. So it wasn't like that. So it was a little bit different.
Have you noticed a difference in students over those 2 years?
I mean, really, they're tired. They're really tired.
Tired of Zooming, or tired of?
Just tired.
Just tired.
I mean, we all are. I mean, realistically, we have all been in a very long drawn out disaster for 2 years. And it's incredibly traumatic, and it's draining in ways that most people are very ill-equipped for. And I mean, it's awful for people. And so, yeah, people are just tired.
Well, did it change home life any?
Well, I mean, yeah, it had to.
I mean, that concept of home has changed for a lot of people, I think, crossing the
Yeah,
boundary.
it has very dramatically. My kids, who were 14 and 16 when all of this started, um, effectively had to shift to no physical contact with friends and family to protect me overnight. I mean, just
Overnight.
bang.
Oh.
So no family gatherings, no face-to-face with friends, no eating at restaurants, no going to activities, nothing. Just gone.
And
And, you know, in addition to that, my husband works in a hospital, and which puts him in a pretty, and he's extremely careful. He's very, very good at his job. But at the height of the pandemic, you know, he would strip off his work clothes on the porch. You know, his shoes still don't come in the house. And we still largely stay separately during the week. He works Monday through Thursday. We're currently staying in different counties, partly to protect me. We're all together on the weekends, but that gives from Thursday night all the way to Friday night for everything to go through the laundry and everything to air out and all of that to keep me safe.
Do you see an end in sight?
Not really.
Not really. Not at this point, even.
No, I mean, one of the quirks, it's a nice word for it, about my immune condition, you know, I think I mentioned I have mast cell activation syndrome, which, among other things, causes me to develop sudden, really, really severe allergies to things, sometimes really randomly and without warning. One of those things that I react to is viruses. And so if I catch a cold, I start going into recurrent anaphylaxis just because there's a virus in my body.
Right.
And I've been hospitalized because of colds. I've been hospitalized because of sinus infections. I did catch a breakthrough case of COVID from a doctor's office waiting room, actually, because I had caught a case of bronchitis and had to seek medical treatment. And then somebody came into the waiting room unmasked, refused to put on a mask for a short period of time, but that short period of time was enough. And our protocol was that the hospital was too dangerous for me unless I needed to be intubated and put on a vent. That was the only time I was to go to a hospital. Other than that, just weather it at home.
You became your own MD?
I mean, pretty much.
Pretty much.
I have my immunologist nurse's cell phone number, and so, you know, I could text their office if need be, but I have, you know, my immunosuppressant injections here at the house. I have oxygen here at the house. I have all of my rescue meds here at the house. I was hospitalized for a sinus infection in March of 2020, and my immunologist warned me then that, you know, at that point nobody wanted to be hospitalized. So the hospital was very quiet, very empty. It was very creepy. But she warned me that once we got me out of there, that I had to be prepared for handling whatever at home.
Well, it almost seems like your other training, like in emergency management and Red Cross and all that, and public health, has all been opportune almost.
It helps in some ways in terms of crisis management, but it's still a lot. My family's a little unusually shaped. I have a husband and a couple of partners, and one of my partners is a medic, another is an LPN, my husband is a pharmacist, and I'm trained as an EMT. And so we're fairly well equipped, but still, when I'm blue, it's still not fun.
It's not fun. So since that March event, have you been back into a hospital to spend overnight? I guess I should say.
I have not for myself.
Okay.
And I hadn't even set foot in a hospital until very recently, like here in the last few weeks. A friend of mine is in liver failure, and I'm his power of attorney, and he's dying. And he was hospitalized for 2 weeks. He was in and out of ICU and kind of bleeding from everywhere because his liver wasn't able to make clotting factors. And for that, we took the risk.
So did mask up twice or something? How did you?
Yeah, mask up twice. Mask up twice and pray a whole bunch. And keep distance and keep moving and don't stay overnight and make sure I'm in areas with good air movement and
gloves,
hands and gloves if I was going to be touching stuff, but gloves can get gunk on them just like your hands can.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You have to think about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Every scenario.
Yeah.
Possible scenario.
So, but he is now discharged, and so he's kind of become part of our little isolation bubble, if you will. Mm-hmm. So there have been some good points to that.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about this whole 2 years, some positive things that come out. Is there anything positive?
There have been a number of things. I mean, for one thing, as a person with a disability, a lot of things that for a lot of years just couldn't be done are suddenly doable. Like grocery delivery, or lots of positions worked from home. In the workplace, lots of people with disabilities have been asking a long time for that accommodation. Lots of employers have been going, oh, no, we just can't possibly. And all of a sudden, oh gosh, it happens. There's, and then they find out that if you work from home, you're actually a lot of times more productive. But then, being able to do things like curbside. If you're somebody like me who has mobility issues, I can like run most of my errands, air quotes, on my phone, and then I can drive around town and just curbside all the things. And that's something I'll continue to be able to do, but likely post-pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is helpful. Very helpful.
And helpful to people above and beyond people with immune issues. I mean, people with mobility issues, or people recovering from surgery. People trying to wrestle baby strollers into stores, or just people wrestling multiple, I have shopped with multiple children in Walmart. Holy cow. Like,
Yeah.
and I only had two. Like, some days that was kind of a lot.
Yeah.
And so I do think there are some good things, but I mean, it's a heck of a cost.
Yeah, it is. I keep thinking if you're in a wheelchair most of the time with your temperature, those things that they had at some places
Oh
where you're
gosh,
supposed to have your temperature checked before you even enter
they don't
the area.
recognize me as human.
Yeah, uh, you're not tall enough, or
Uh-uh. No,
yeah.
I'm not. I did finally figure out at my neurologist's office here in Stillwater, it's down on 12th Street. They have a very short person version down below where you can like flash your wrist at it, but they don't have it marked.
Mm,
It's like, what would a sign kill y'all? Like, seriously.
yeah.
And it's a small thing, but it's kind of dehumanizing when the temperature thing doesn't recognize you as a person.
Right.
It's very dumb, but
I wonder if they've even thought about that now, 2 years in.
oh, I've told them.
Have they changed?
Not yet.
Not yet. No. Mm. Well, one of the other things you keep reading about is the isolation impact that's going to have on people in the long run. How do we, come out from that?
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
One of the things that's gonna be hardest for me is relationships after the fact.
Mm.
Um, there there are a lot of people that I was really close to right up until the middle of March of 2020 that, I see what they post on social media. And when they post things like this is natural selection,
Mm.
or the immune compromised should just accept their fate, or they're going to die anyway, or they were sick anyway. I mean, I've lost friends who are about my age, and I'm 40, and I was super happy to hit 40. I turned 40 last June, and like I was dancing, but because I was like, hey, I am not dead yet, because there was this implication for a lot of people that like, well, yeah, like we're gonna. It was very eugenics sounding from I mean, lots of people I love,
Mm.
and I'm not sure I want those people back.
Yeah. It'll be interesting what they say to you when they see you face to face. If they say anything,
They won't.
they won't. Mm.
No, I mean, who is gonna look at another human being and say, "Oh, you didn't get naturally selected out of the population"? Darn the luck.
Uh, you might tell them that. Look, I wasn't.
They
It's
aren't worth the energy.
well, that's probably true too.
But I was talking to my therapist. I've been very fortunate to be able to maintain mental health care. Throughout this, I see a therapist by phone. I might be okay with losing some of those relationships if that's really what a lot of these folks think of people like me, quote unquote. I'm not sure I want those. I'm not sure I want that kind of energy in my mental house, as it were. But there's a lot of that. It is unreal.
I don't get on social media enough to
Yeah.
to pay any attention to it.
It is brutal. I mean, and these are close friends, family members even.
Well, from your standpoint, then what about from your children's? Is it? I mean, it. long-term
My
effects on that too, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, my I'm not sure if it's humanly possible for two people to be more different from one another than my children. You know, same upbringing, same parents, completely different humans. Um, my younger kiddo, who is now almost 17, very, very much has my personality, is much more introverted about things, and just has maintained very quiet but very firm boundaries about, this is what's acceptable. We're going to maintain these boundaries to protect our family and to not have sickness in our home. Because even if I get sick, particularly at like the height of Omicron, if I had to be hospitalized with something like a cold or the flu or something, there have been a lot of times where we kept track of hospital beds and tracked how many miles they'd have to send me. And in a lot of cases, they'd have to send me out of state. And so I'd get sent away from my healthcare team and the team of people who've worked with me now for years and years, who understand my healthcare and understand the complexities of working with me as a patient, and just get sent somewhere, wherever there's a bed. And sometimes those distances are hundreds of miles. And there's the reality that if we're only sending me because I need a vent, that I probably wouldn't make it. And like, my kids have spent this pandemic knowing that. Like, they understand that. And okay, yeah, they're mostly adult, and well, okay, now my older one is 18, and so yeah, he's adult, but that's heavy. That's a lot.
That's heavy.
My older kiddo had a manager at work who tried to tell him that he wasn't allowed to wear a mask because it bothered customers and it was a political act. And he was 17 at the time. And he just told his manager, I'm doing this to protect my mom. My mom is immunocompromised. I'm going to wear this mask. And his manager pushed him. And the manager is like my age, like pushing a kid. There's no reason for that.
There isn't.
And my kid stood up to his manager and said, look, you got two options. I keep this mask on or I walk. There's the door. Your call. Which is a tremendous thing for a kid to have to do. Particularly in protection of another human and in protection of his mom. It's not like a teenager throwing a fit, getting mad at work because, they didn't like the way something was. It's not like that. It's
life and death.
Yeah.
Basically.
And they've carried that type of thing every day for 2 years. It's so much. So it's been a lot for them. And they've, I know every parent's supposed to say this, and every parent means it, but I don't know if I could ask for better kids. I mean, they have handled this whole situation with such resiliency and such grace. And not once in 2 years and change at this point have they ever said, but can't we fudge this just a little? Can't we bend the rules just a little? These are teenagers. Teenagers are all about bending rules.
Yes.
And not one time. None. Zero. They've said, gosh, this sucks. Gosh, I hate it. Like, I wish it wasn't this way. Which is totally valid. I wish it wasn't this way too. But Never once. And never once have they tried to bend them.
Mm.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah. I mean, they've had to change their school aspect too, as well as, you know, a lot of things have changed for them.
We were very fortunate with school because they had been homeschooled for many years.
Okay.
So school was not a big, they did not take the like educational hit that a whole lot of other kids did. So thank God for that. They There were lots of other changes and there was lots of other big scary stuff. That wasn't one of them. It was just, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing.
Well, it's part of the reason for the homeschooling your condition to keep them for
No,
viruses. Just
um,
no.
no,
That's okay. I just was curious.
yeah, no, we started that really, really early on. Um, it is mostly due to the genetic connective tissue disorder that we have. Both
Mm.
kids are also affected, and Liam, my younger kiddo, needed physical therapy for some balance issues that they were having. Brayden, my elder kiddo, needed occupational therapy because when he tried to do timed work, he'd grip his pencil too hard and his fingers would dislocate. And
Okay.
then that would cause anxiety because if you are thinking about timed work that causes your fingers to dislocate, then you're going to get anxious about that because that hurts. Like,
Mm.
that's not pleasant. So we had gone to the school they were attending and said, "Hey, could we please give them some help for this?" But at the time, there wasn't an achievement gap, so the school wasn't able to help them.
Mm.
And so we went ahead and got them hooked up with occupational therapy and physical therapy. But they were having so many absences to be able to do that then we were running into trouble there. And it's just like,
Yep.
okay, we'll just do this in a way that we can be more flexible.
Okay. So you've gotten really good at managing
Yeah.
multiple schedules and time and all of that. Well, then let's fast forward a little bit. When vaccines came out, did that change or not change, or what kind of impact did that have? Did you take one? I guess it's the
Oh, yes. Oh,
you had
gosh.
one.
Oh, gosh.
That would have been a major decision. Uh,
Um, yeah, it was, gosh, it was wild. Um, I was actually in one of the first groups to get vaccinated, and not because of my immune status. It was because I'm a volunteer with emergency management, which
okay.
classifies me as a first responder. And I had actually had an appointment with my immunologist that morning because we had a meeting with emergency management that said, hey, if you want vaccines, that's going to be happening sometime in the next couple of weeks, potentially, but you may not get a lot of warning when it does. So just be aware, be ready, and all that. So I made an appointment with my immunologist because I wanted to know what she thought about it. Because, I mean, I'm allergic to certain wavelengths of light.
Mm.
Like, I react to weird stuff. And, it was when there was a lot of talk of allergic reactions to the vaccine. And I wanted to know what she had to say. And I asked her about it. My appointment was at 10 a.m. and she said, "Okay, let's look at let's look at the math here. If you get a vaccine, regardless of which one, your odds of anaphylaxis are 1 in a million ish at that point. And her take on it is, okay, if you go into anaphylaxis, so, which sounds horrible, but like it's kind of the devil we know.
Mm.
Like, I mean, it's very dangerous. It can be potentially fatal, but we're really good at doing anaphylaxis. Like, I've got EpiPens with me. Like, we have a plan. I have a whole protocol. I actually wear a bracelet that has my protocol connected to it. So, like, an ER doc can pull it up. It's got all the instructions. It's the whole thing. So, like, we are good at anaphylaxis. She said, okay, so, oh, okay, so if your heart stops, we restart it. Like, whatever. Which sounds awful and terrifying, but she wasn't wrong. She says, but that's 1 in a million. I mean, really. She said, okay, if you get COVID unvaccinated, your odds of being hospitalized with a healthy immune system are 1 in 10.
Okay.
And your immune system isn't healthy. And your odds of death with a healthy immune system are between 1 and 5 and 100, and your immune system isn't healthy.
That was a no-brainer then.
Yeah, she was just like, let's just talk about the math. And it was like, yeah, there's probably some risk to you, but we know how to manage that risk. And if you catch this unvaccinated, the risks are profound. And so that was 10 a.m. At 3:45 that afternoon, I got a text message. It's a group text from emergency management that said that they'd been giving vaccines to hospital staff, and it was, when they were dealing with all the freezer issues, and if they thawed doses, they had to be used in a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like really watching the supply. They were giving vaccines to hospital staff because we were still in that group. We weren't to first responders yet. It was still hospital staff. There were 9 doses left that day. They didn't want to waste them. And so they were offering those doses to the police department and to emergency management. And if we wanted vaccines, we needed to get to the health department now.
Okay.
And so my immunologist had given me at that 10 a.m. appointment instructions for pre-medicating to help reduce my risk of reaction. So I took my meds, I grabbed my keys, and I went. And I was there in like 10 minutes. And got my first dose that day. And it was in December of 2020. So I was in very early group.
Very early, yeah. And did you have a reaction while you did you need your EpiPen? No.
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 No. No, I did, however, demand ice cream for not ugly crying in front of like a bunch of the Stillwater Police Department. So we went and got ice cream afterwards. My partner also volunteers for Stillwater Emergency Management, so we both went. We both got our first shots.
Okay.
My husband had gotten his first dose because of being a hospital worker. So at that point, 3 of us were covered.
Okay. And then did you do the second shot and then the booster as well?
Yes. Yeah. I got the second shot 3 weeks later because my first shot was Moderna. No, sorry, Pfizer, not Moderna. First shot was Pfizer, second shot was Pfizer, and then booster was Moderna. And I had a delay on the booster because in the intervening time, that's when I caught COVID.
So you've had it. Okay.
Yeah. I caught COVID in a doctor's office waiting.
Oh, yes, you did say that. Yes.
And so my immunologist told me to wait 90 days between the time I got diagnosed with COVID and the time I took the booster.
Okay. So that would probably been in the summertime?
I caught COVID. I was diagnosed August 9th.
So in the summer. How was that for you?
It was pretty brutal.
Was it?
Uh, uh, I knew something. I had developed some kind of little bronchitis lung thing and had gone to urgent care. They tested me for COVID. They tested me for flu. I was negative. They did a chest X-ray. I didn't have pneumonia. Like, we're very cautious about lung stuff with me because my lungs have a bad habit of collapsing with things like colds. Like cold sinus things, they're a big deal for me.
Mm.
Real big deal. So they tested me and I was negative, but it was at that appointment that I caught COVID. And I knew something was wrong a few days later when I was eating some salsa. And I like spicy food, really spicy food. And I was eating some salsa that was made with ghost peppers, Carolina Reapers, and Trinidad scorpion peppers. I mean, so we're talking the hottest peppers in
Hot.
the world.
Yes.
And I was eating it with a soup spoon like it was gazpacho. And it was a brand I'd never bought before, so I thought the salsa was defective.
Mm.
The spice didn't register at all. I could taste the tomatoes, but no spice, like zero. And I commented to my partner that I thought that something was wrong with the salsa. And to him, like, black pepper is really super spicy.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Yeah.
dipped the handle of a fork just barely in the jar and like touched it to his tongue and then proceeded to start dancing all around the kitchen because holy cow, it was spicy. And so we knew something was bad.
So taste was your first clue.
Yeah. One of the issues that we run into is because of the mast cell. Part of managing the mast cell issues is that I am very immunosuppressed. I take 2 biologic medications that keep me out of anaphylaxis, keep me from having severe asthma attacks. Among other things, that also keeps me from being able to run a fever quite normally.
Mm.
So I never ran a fever really. I think I got up to like 99.0. But I got tested the following Monday because at that point that was kind of the peak of the Delta wave, and there weren't any home tests available. The health department couldn't test me, so I called my primary care physician. That we noticed something was bad on I think a Sunday. I got tested the next day, and by that next day, I don't know how better to describe it other than my lungs felt like they were made of wood.
Mm.
You know, when you take a breath in, you know how your lungs just expand and they just wouldn't.
Wouldn't.
They were just rigid. And yeah, that was bad. My body kind of lost the ability to metabolize fluid and nutrients normally. Um, it kind of forgot what to do with oxygen, and it was bad. It's real bad.
So you'd have to worry about hydration
Mm-hmm.
too.
Um, there was some pretty significant mitochondrial damage at the cellular level. So like even now my cells really kind of don't know what to do with food. So I have to be real careful about eating frequently enough. And I came away from that because mast cells and random allergies to weird stuff. I'm now allergic to meat. So beef, pork, chicken, turkey, also fish and shellfish, and crustaceans, also polyester, randomly.
You can't wear something with polyester? Huh.
I will swell up, break out in hives, I'll start wheezing.
Wow. So you've got to read
So
labels.
yeah,
Look them
and have
label
to
over. So,
completely
so
read.
your relationship with food has, changed or complicates things for sure.
Yes. I was already allergic to citrus and refined wheat flour,
Mm.
and also hemp, which turns up in weird things. Um, so yeah, it really complicated things. Early on, my body wasn't tolerating eggs or dairy either, but that seems to have resolved, which is a thing that happens occasionally with mast cell reactions. They can reverse. And so there may be some point that I'm able to eat those things again. And my immunologist has me challenging them periodically under controlled conditions. So far, it has not gone well with any of those other things.
So you almost need a dietitian on your team of healthcare.
I have one. She has no idea what to do with me because she
Oh,
has never seen mast cell disease in the flesh.
so you'll have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, she was actually Googling things and sent me a PowerPoint slide deck that a close friend of mine with the same diagnosis as me helped write.
So I'm thinking your health team's got to be quite large. I mean, your immunologist, your
Yeah, there are 24 different specialists.
24.
Yeah. And they're world class. They're phenomenal.
Well, I'm thinking if you hadn't already been in training, going to the gym already, that it could have been worse.
Absolutely.
You think? Have you
Um,
been able to? Well, I guess that's a dumb question. Have you been able to go back to the gym? No.
no. We do have some home gym space that we put together during the pandemic that I'm starting to get to the point that I can start to use a little bit. Um, but physical activity still just, gosh, it drains me. Um, it's so much better than it was, but I'm still not back to normal. Um, Very early on, oddly, the act of like hanging up laundry, that act of just putting your arm above your head, I would pass out
Ooh.
because of the fluid dynamics. Just wouldn't do it, which was one of the wilder experiences I've had in a while. It would trip the vasovagal nerve. Be just like, nope, you're not doing that. Um, So I did a pretty substantial amount of physical therapy and occupational therapy to try to get me back to the normal. The cognitive impacts have been pretty tough as well. I still run into spaces mentally that are just kind of not there.
Mm.
One of the weirder ones that shows up periodically is right and left. Every once in a while, I will have days that I can't tell right and left.
Mm.
And like I'll do the thing, like with your hands and like find the L and oh yeah, that's left. When I'm having and we don't know what triggers that, if it's a cognitive load thing or stress or nutrition or whatever. But when I get into that state, I'll sit there and go, okay, I know there's a trick that has something to do with this. and there's a thing that people tell me to do, and I don't know it. And it's just gone. But I can do north, south, east, and west.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
it's not that like directionality or my spatial awareness is completely gone.
So at least having that, you could still drive.
Yeah, so I've been able to drive. Getting back to driving was really hard, and it still is somewhat. I've actually been kind of making myself drive as part of my rehab because like the roads aren't where I left them.
Hmm.
Think about Oklahoma construction.
Yep, something's always going on. Yes.
Well, and like I've almost driven off the road in places because there are roads that I have taken hundreds of times for years, but like that lane isn't there anymore.
Hmm.
I haven't driven it in 2 years. And they did a whole construction project and I didn't go on that road. So it's now complete, but that piece of road isn't there. And the first couple of times that happened, that was terrifying.
You've got to relearn some things.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Has it impacted your vision?
It did a little. There is this, God bless my ophthalmologist, who referred to women of a certain age. Dude called me old. But he said that the people of a certain age go through loss of accommodation, which is the sciencey way of saying when we need bifocals.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't cause a profound shift, but overnight I went from the not loss of accommodation stage to needing bifocals.
Mm.
So it just kind of like nudged me over that line. And so, but I have progressives now and like it's okay. It was just kind of like, really? Seriously? Like what the heck? Come on now. But in terms, I've worn glasses and contacts for years, so it wasn't like a
Were
big
you
deal.
able to go into the doctor's office to do that? For them
Yes.
to do all of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to wait until I had tested negative.
Mm.
That was one of the weirder things, is that there was this long process. Most of the time it's all about protecting me. And then there was like this period in August and early September when it was all about protecting everyone from me.
Mm. Okay.
And that was a whole shift. That was weird.
So are you still having symptoms if you had that? It's been, well, I don't know, 9 months since you had it. So August, do my math here.
It's
What's it do? About 7.
I still get fatigued much more easily. My lungs and my immune system are still far more reactive than they were before. I'm not nearly as physically strong or in as good a condition as I was. Cognitively, I'm not back to 100%, but I'm probably at like 85% now, which, okay, I'll take at the moment. So I'm not having like active COVID symptoms, but I do have post-COVID, or whatever they're eventually going to call it.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it called that, or long COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're seeing a little bit of improvements though each day, a little bit.
day, week, month, whatever. And the research does say that people with symptoms like mine do heal. But my immunologist told me to prepare for it to be multiple years. She told me it was going to be a marathon, that I'd get there, she thought, but that this was going to take a long time. And so, I'm getting better, but, I can now hang shirts up. But
Well, early on and until now, has your source of information changed any? Like, at the beginning, did you go like online a particular place to get all of your information and TV or whatever?
it hasn't really changed. I mean, for me, I generally rely on emergency management and public health sources and, Red Cross response sources, but that would be the same about a pandemic or any other disaster.
Okay.
So that hasn't really shifted.
And when you were keeping track, do you still keep track of beds available?
Yeah.
You still do? I haven't checked that lately. I don't know. It has improved in Stillwater, hasn't it?
It has. When my friend was in ICU now about 10 days ago, there was actually a lag getting him to a regular room because the issue is not so much ICU beds as regular beds. Because he was at Hillcrest. They were at about 85% capacity on ICU beds, but at 96% capacity on regular beds.
That's still a concern then.
Yeah. So that hasn't gone away, even though the news cycle has kind of moved on to other things.
Well, do you see an end in sight where you don't have to keep isolated even in your own house? Like in 6 months or a year or just two?
I mean,
just don't know.
We just don't know. I mean, we're able to be, as cases decrease, we're able to be a little bit more flexible in our own home. But, as this shift from pandemic to endemic happens, the virus doesn't go away.
No.
And I'm not going to be less allergic to viruses. That reality for me doesn't magically disappear as much as sometimes I wish it would. So I hate the phrase new normal because I think it's dumb, but we just kind of have to get better at learning to navigate. I mean, I anticipate that I'll probably wear a mask in public for years.
Yeah. I'm thinking with all these new skills that you've learned at home, like to give yourself your shots and all of that will become the new normal, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you won't need to necessarily go. There's pros and cons to that too, I suppose.
Yeah. It does save me time. It saves me driving. It saves me gas. Getting used to tipping other people to do things like groceries was really hard. Because it felt like I was risking other people's immune system to save mine.
That's become a convenience that a lot of people still like to do now, shop online.
Yeah. And
I'm not there yet. I prefer to go mask and pick it out myself.
And for me, I just generally can't. And my partner pointed out that, it's like, particularly when cases are really high, it's like I would be going into combat wearing a t-shirt with
Mm.
my immune system. And, someone with a healthy immune system, is at least going wearing some kind of body armor.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah.
fine, fine. But it took me a really long time to be okay with that because it felt like I was endangering somebody else so that I could have milk, bread, and eggs. I finally got there, because I understand that that is helping somebody else make a living and that they're choosing that, and that we all have to choose how we're gonna make our way through this. But that was a tough choice. It's real tough.
Well, you're still teaching online, and then probably in the fall you'll still be teaching online as well.
My classes are all scheduled online. My hope is to maybe do like a couple of days a week, like on campus office hours, depending on how cases look.
And you mask up and they mask up just to be safe, or to be safer.
The if there's no mandate on campus, I can't make them.
No, and it doesn't. It just says encouraged. They went from
So
expected to now it's encouraged.
yeah, so all I can do is ask them, please don't risk my life.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to be okay with speaking those words too to another person, because that frequently gets into a whole discussion of my medical history and things like that. And now I've talked about it enough that I'm pretty comfortable with it. But that was kind of a lot at first, because talking about it to anybody and having a conversation like this, is really talking about the likelihood of my own death.
Mm. Yeah.
And cases are decreasing now, so that likelihood is much lower. But that's something that for 2 years we as a family have stared in the face every single day.
So I'm assuming you have a plan in place if that happens, or at least
Yeah.
everybody knows. Is everybody's on the same page?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Pretty
And
much.
yep. Yeah, we talk about that plan often.
Mm.
And as soon as I was diagnosed, my husband asked me to review my wishes concerning life support, and which is absolutely the responsible thing to do. And so we did that, and and then we did the same thing. My husband and my elder kiddo and one of my partners have all gotten breakthrough cases. We're all fully vaccinated, but have all had breakthrough cases, and we've had the exact same conversations there too, because it is our belief as a family that nobody should have to make those decisions alone.
Mm-mm.
And we're kind of all in this together, and we're going to do this as a team. But yeah, we have a plan in case I die, or in case any of us does.
Yeah, we all should, but we don't always be that proactive either.
But I grew up doing with death cleaning being a thing. That you clean out your house before you die and bequeath those things that you love to the people you love, so you can see them love them and share in that love. And I grew up with estate planning just being a thing that you talk about and that you do. And so these conversations aren't weird in our family. Sorry for the dogs going a little crazy. But so those were I think we were lucky in that those were easier conversations for us to have than for some other families.
You have to have a very practical approach to even to get your plan for the day too. It sounds like too. So, if you could teach someone about all of this, tell them something, what would be one or two things that you would want future generations or whatever to know about all of this, or even current ones that aren't aware of how serious it can be for some people?
One of them, and it's an easily transferable thing, even if we're not talking about COVID, would be have a will, have an advance, or a trust. Pick your thing, but have an estate plan. Don't leave that up to the people you leave behind, regardless of how and when you die. Have an advance directive, and get a pre-need. Like, have your funeral planned and paid for. Don't leave that to other people. Because I think we're now pushing 1 in 300, but the last exact number I saw was 1 in 312 Oklahomans who were here when we got those emails back in March of 2020. 1 in 312 Oklahomans who were here that day aren't here now.
That's a significant number, isn't it?
And that's a lot of funeral planning, and that's a lot of people wishing they'd had a will, and that's a lot of people making really hard decisions about life support. And that's a lot of people who weren't prepared for any of those things because stuff happened real fast. But I mean, all that stuff works if you're 100 years old and die in your sleep. I mean, or whatever. And so I think that's super important for everybody. The other thing that I think is that I wish people would understand the difference between rights and convenience. People seem to have this notion that something like a mask is oppression. And don't get me wrong, if we ever get to a point where this is over, I will stand with people and burn masks and dance around the bonfire. I do not love them any more than the next person, but if they help protect somebody or help me protect somebody, I'll wear a mask all day long. It's not oppressing me. Holy cow. Like, and nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it say that, you have a right to not wear a mask or whatever. And if that's really cramping your life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, like, your life must be really terrible. Or you must not be really happy or something. But, to me, doing those really basic things are an act of compassion. And I wish more people would. Because realistically, it didn't have to be this way. We could have stopped this. And we chose not to.
It has been a long 2 years, hasn't it?
It has. The last 2 years have been a pretty long century.
Spring helps a little bit just to be able to see outside and that, new life is occurring, but it's still been a long, and we're still in recovery mode.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of you think we need to include?
Not that
I've gone through my list.
Okay.
Let's just check real quick. We covered what you thought was positive from this, which just a few things. No, then my last question I typically ask everybody, everyone I interview, is how do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to remember Chris Davis?
I want to be remembered as someone who taught. You know, one of the things that made me super mad when I got COVID was that I want my non-COVID post-mortem plan is I want to go to a body farm in Texas. And I want to decompose as part of some grad student's thesis project. And then my bones will go become part of the comparative osteology, their collection down there, and they will keep my bones in a box in perpetuity. My bones will be good for teaching because I have lots of hardware from all the orthopedic surgeries that I've had. So they're good comparative osteology bones, but they'll let me keep teaching even after I'm gone. And that's something that's important to me. That will also be a less expensive option for my family. And that's valuable to me, but I've got teaching to do still. And
you have thought about this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's one dog.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's Lily. She is blind and deaf, and she's kind of a hoot. But yeah, the thing I keep telling people in all of this who have this assumption that people who are sick are somehow just practically dead anyway. It's like, no, I'm actually very, very, very much alive.
Yes. And you have plans.
And my life is worth living. And it's meaningful. And, and I'm not about to let a virus mess up my post-mortem plans, but I'm not ready to execute those post-mortem plans just yet. I've got stuff to do while I'm alive still.
Including having more ice cream. Hopefully. Yeah. Or ghost peppers.
And yes, lots of ghost peppers to have.
Well, then, if there's nothing else, I'll say thank you very much for sharing this morning with me. It's been great.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And I wish you all the best.
No, thank you so much.
And I'll wear my mask for you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.